Hello viewers. Welcome to News 24, where we bring you the most reliable information. If you're new, I encourage you to hit the subscription button, turn on the notification bell so you can be the first to get the latest of our videos. Every news channel over the past 4 months has had one predominant headline: the conflict in Ukraine. Every gun that is made, every warship that is launched, every rocket that is fired signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. These are the words of Dwight D. Eisenhower, the 34th U.S. President, in 1953. He stated, and I quote, "The cost of one modern heavy bomber is this: a modern brick school in more than 30 cities. It is 2 electric power plants, each serving a town of over 60,000 people. It is some 5 miles of concrete highway. We pay for a single fighter plane with 500,000 bushels of wheat. We pay for a single destroyer with new homes that could have housed more than 8,000 people." Later in his presidency, he gave a dire warning about the risks of setting up a military-industrial complex. He saw it as a threat to democracy and was worried about the cost of an armed conflict with the Soviet Union and the resources it would take from different countries, such as hospitals, roads, schools, and buildings. More than half a century later, the Soviet Union collapsed, but one man has begun to revive it. His name is Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine in January 2022 in what he referred to as the denazification of Ukraine. For months into the invasion, neither Russia nor Ukraine appears to be benefiting from it. Both nations are caught up in what is referred to as a frozen conflict. So who is the conflict profiting? The international arms market is controlled by a handful of huge players. From 2015 to 2020, the US, UK, Russia, Germany, France, and China exported over 80% of the world's weapons. Except for China, all these nations are directly involved in the Ukraine conflict. Russia is considered the aggressor and Ukraine is the victim. The US, UK, France, and Germany are all arming Ukraine. The United States have maintained a staggering presence in this conflict, and here is why. The US alone accounts for about 37% of the global arms export and is currently the largest weapons exporter in the world. It is home to the top 5 weapons producers in the world. These corporations are the likes of Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, and General Dynamics. All 5 are American-owned, and together they sold over $160 billion worth of weapons in 2019. After all, war is good for business. As the crisis in Ukraine began, these companies saw great opportunities and their shares witnessed a dramatic surge. Raytheon saw a nearly 8% increase in its share prices, General Dynamics 12%, Lockheed 18%, and Northrop Grumman a whopping 22% increase. Weapons from these companies are now on every battlefield worldwide. I'm talking about lethal weapons such as Swift-Blade drones, Javelin missiles, howitzers, armored and tactical vehicles, lots of pistols, shotguns, and machine guns. Since the start of the war, America claims to have dedicated about $3 billion in the form of weapons to Ukraine, but almost all of these came from the existing American stockpile. These weapon manufacturing complexes recently corrected their stock prices to cash in on extra profits. Of course, with the help of the US government. In April 2020, the Pentagon held a classified meeting and invited 8 CEOs of its greatest weapon manufacturers. Also present was the United States Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks. On their agenda were 3 objectives. First was to supply critical competencies to Ukraine. Next was to enhance the readiness of U.S. forces, and finally to support U.S. partners and allies in boosting their defense capabilities. This was simply a way of the U.S. authorities telling these producers they needed more weapons. U.S. lawmakers plan to finance this weapon demand in 2 ways. First to utilize the Pentagon Ukraine's Security Assistance Fund, and next was the U.S. State Department's Foreign Military Finance Program. The Pentagon was given $3.5 billion to replenish U.S. weapon inventory. This was $1.75 billion greater than what Biden had requested, but he still wanted more. He requested Congress for an extra $33 billion to aid Ukraine in fighting Russia. About $20 million was meant to purchase more weapons from the large industrial military plants. Adding more salt to injury is the fact that these companies are unapologetic as regards the destruction their weapons cost in conflict nations. Gregory Hayes, CEO of Raytheon, on January 2022 before the war began said the following words. "We are seeing, I would say, opportunities for international sales. The tensions in Eastern Europe, the South China Sea, all of these things are putting some pressure on some defense spending over there, so I fully expect we are going to see some benefits from it." End of quotes. 3 months after issuing these statements, Hayes said he would not apologize for profiting from the Ukraine war. This is what he told Harvard Business Review, so I make no apology for that. I think we are here to defend, and the fact is eventually we will see some benefits in the business over time. End of quotes. Is American weapon transfer really about defending democracy? Barely a few months after Biden's inauguration, he approved the sales of $2.5 billion worth of weapons to Egypt. The following month, he authorized a weapon deal worth $85 million to Chile, $2.43 million weapon sales to the Philippines, $42.4 million deal to Thailand, and over $650 million weapon sales to Saudi Arabia. All these countries carry very soiled human rights reputations. We certainly cannot deny the fact that nations at war need help, but to what extent should weapons pour into their countries? I suppose nations like Yemen, Syria, Libya, and Iraq should serve as examples of nations that were overfurnished with ammunition. Throughout history, one thing remains certain. For defense companies to make money, conflicts must go on. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, and share.